Good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining in. Today's session is about Reimage, a new era of business in Thailand with digital CIO. It is a pleasure for me to introduce our guest who is going to share his experience and advice how to do digital transformation for Thailand particularly. Our guest, has a long experience in leading digital reinventions and digital transformations. He is now the CIO of AIS, Thailand #1 mobile service provider with more than 14 million subscribers and more than 13,000 employees. Please join me to welcome Kun Sanjay and Thomas.
Hi, Kunpupa. Thank you for having me here today. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much for your time, Kun Sanjay. Hope you are doing well and how because we have very 30 minutes only, right? Let me start with the one question. Question one first about what is your thought about a CIO role in the modern telco and in Thailand market particularly?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I actually prepped some slides just to make sure that the communications are clear to everybody because I understand I may end up speaking too fast and for the non-native English speakers. So in terms of the role itself for the CIO role within a modern telco, in the AIS case, it's a relatively new role. In fact, I'm told that I'm actually the first CIO in the company's history. And I think it's an acknowledgement of the increasing role of IT in the modern telco. It's getting more strategic. It's a more expansive role. There is a focus on me acting as a change agent, trying to move us away from our traditional telco position towards a what we've termed as a technology and digital lifestyle company, which is how we want to rebrand ourselves and make ourselves very central to the way Thai people actually interact with digital in the future. The other role I see myself doing is essentially a partnership builder, kind of forging partnerships and relationships with, this expanded ecosystem that we need to create in order for us to become that digital lifestyle company. And this could be, working with companies such as yourself, like Microsoft, and also working with, fintechs and banks and other types of companies that in the past that we likely would not have partnered with in our traditional telco posturing. So some of this kind of focus is part of my job. And a lot of the innovation that you're going to see in the next decade or so is likely going to be driven by IT as the network itself and connectivity essentially becomes commoditized. The real value add is going to be in that next generation of products that will likely be driven by technology and helping us work in a kind of a more partnership model, because I think we need to have to expand the way we do business. And that actually is more in line with the traditional IT model, because we've always worked with partners in the IT side, and we've always had more of an open source mindset, at least in the last, say, 10 or 15 years. Whereas if you look at the traditional telco technologies like networking and stuff, it's far less diverse in terms of players and in terms of partners that you collaborate with. So all of this kind of is why the focus is shifting to my office and my teams to help to drive our innovation and reinvent.
Wow, that's interesting that you share you are the first CIO in AIS, right? And yeah, AIS has been with, more than 30 years in Thailand, and you are the first CIO. And I think that there will be something fun in the future about the digital transformation for sure, right? That's why you are here. Then let me lead to the second questions about how you drive, as AIS is very big, right? And how you drive your digital transformation at AIS, and how are you differentiating your digital transformation with others?
That's right. Okay. All right. So about March of this year. So my mandate was to, help us transform, like I mentioned, into this digital lifestyle company, and a company that would become, very central to the way the ordinary Thai citizen would experience digital. So from the start, I wanted to differentiate the way I would actually go to market with my transformation. So this past March, I unveiled something known as the Cognitive Telco. And what I stated was that in order for our transformation to be different, many companies are doing digital transformation, and almost everybody now brands themselves as a digital transformation expert or consultant. So how do we differentiate from the competition? So what I decided to do and help to convince my colleagues in terms of our strategy was that I think we should look at our transformation being driven by cognitive, by AI and machine learning based, platform-based AI ML. And I wanted it to infuse all aspects of the transformation. So I looked at the transformation through 4 lenses. So the first lens is around what I call growing the platform ecosystem. So what does this mean? So I want us to be open, secure, multi-cloud and hybrid. So clearly we've taken steps in that. You well know that we've had the strategic partnership with Microsoft that we signed earlier this year. And this is a particularly a key initiative for AIS. And what we understand is that, like I mentioned, we're going to be offering more non-traditional telco products, right? We need to partner with banks and insurance companies and healthcare providers and distance learning type of providers and such. So all of this is going to impact the platform ecosystem. We need to be able to connect using our partner APIs. Then within AIS itself, we need to have the ability to kind of unlock the information and data that we have stored away in silos and kind of make it more key to the way we actually do our business. So that's the platform-based area. And as we've publicly stated, we are planning to move about half our workloads to the public cloud with Microsoft Azure in the next 4 years. So a very kind of significant bet that we've taken. The second thing I want to do is work on our workflows and try and apply cognitive techniques to workflows. So far, what we've done is we are kind of in the initial stages of our of doing robotic process automation, using we've trained something like about 1,000 citizen developers within AIS, but it's been very I would say low-hanging fruit oriented, right? So, and that itself was significant just to get that whole process going. And now what we want to do next is to start to tackle more complicated processes that can really result in efficiency improvements and in quality improvements. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to apply cognitive techniques to workflows. So whether it be in anti-fraud or eKYC or something more significant in that area. The third component then is around expanding the human experience. So I say human versus customer because I include in this group customers plus employees plus our partners. And I want to be able to ensure that we are using the best techniques in order to maximize that experience. So in the customer side, it's really enhanced deep learning in terms of our customer 360, our next best offers, to really drive very enriched experiences that are ultimately very sticky and would differentiate us. On the employee side, talent is obviously in short supply, especially for the type of work that we are doing. So we want to ensure that we are retaining our people and growing them and increasing their satisfaction. So whatever methods we have in that area to help drive that employee stickiness is something that's key. And then also partners, like I keep stressing, the problems that we are being asked to solve are way bigger than what AIS can do by itself. It takes a village essentially, and so we're going to have to bring in all these varied partners who may be quite small. You may have some fintech that could be, you know, a startup with 3 or 4 employees partnering with a large company like us. So there's going to be a lot of asymmetric partnering that's going to happen. And the opposite is true. We may be partnering with very large companies that that relative to them, we might be considered quite small. So the ability to kind of reduce friction in those interactions, I think, is going to be essential. And once again, having those kind of what we call, you know, delightful and lasting experiences that help us retain our connections. And then the fourth component, of course, is that the toughest one is the cultural component. And, you know, I can't lose sight of that. So I'm calling it creating it's a culture of agile innovation, but, you know, I call it agile to the core. So it's agile thinking that's beyond just a way to do software and develop it. It's essentially permeating all aspects of the enterprise, you know, whether it be in our procurement processes or in our go-to-market, in our marketing, how we solve different problems and such. So all of this, I think, will essentially move us along the path to becoming this future telco, which ultimately will be a cognitive telco. In terms of you know, I decided that I would use some kind of a golden quadrant kind of explanation for where I want to be. So I think AIS has done a very good job in terms of digital services provisioning. And that's one of the reasons we're a market leader and where we are today. So everything along that x-axis, you know, we've created arguably the best network in Thailand, right? In terms of our capability, our throughput, etc., and very loyal customer base, fantastic customer service. These are some of the things that we are very well known for in the market. And we've done an exceptional job of bringing in the right combinations of products and such, whether it be, you know, our partnerships with Disney and Hotstar and all of that, essentially providing very good services to our customers. However, on the enablement area, I think that's the opportunity where I think we can go above and beyond. So the moving along the y-axis and really enabling modernized digital services that clients want, and part of that expanded ecosystem that I mentioned. And so if all of this is executed properly, then we get to live in that fourth quadrant, in that golden quadrant where we've maximized value while building an extremely strong foundation that should keep us going for the next decade or so as the leading provider in Thailand.
Wow, interesting, Khun Sanjay. Thank you for sharing that pillar. I like that 5 pillars of being the cognitive telco, right? And from this slide, the AIS will be going to be like both of the enabler and provider at the same time, right? Can you give me some example, you know, of the services that AIS will how to say, will launch that, you know, to the end customer? What is the impact, or what kind of service that end customer like me, you know, will get, you know, from this cognitive telco?
So in the digital era, I think in terms of, so we recently announced our partnership with SCB, one of Thailand's leading banks. So this was extremely well received by the marketplace, because I think the kind of the holy grail of data intersectionality, I think, is some of the very rich data that we bring in terms of customer movement, customer location, merged with financial information, I think provides extremely great opportunity for hyper-personalization experiences. And that could lead to opportunities in, say, micro lending. It could lead to opportunities in insurance. It can also, with some of our other partners, you can look at, say, things like telemedicine. Certainly, the medical tourism market has been affected by the pandemic, and I think being able to do remote diagnoses of patients, with Thai doctors, but working with patients in other countries is something that could be a very exciting area. The changing work models and the changing schooling models has also really brought to the forefront the importance of online and distance education, and creating very compelling experiences for our customers in this area that will increasingly move towards an augmented or virtual reality kind of interactions and such. These are all some of the areas in which we're focused on. And then if you look at IoT itself, I mean, ultimately we have the best 5G network in Thailand, and we want to monetize it and ensure that we get the correct return on investment that we've made. And IoT is a huge area, both on the consumer side as well as, and particularly on the enterprise side, where we believe there will be products and experiences that will really enhance the individual person's lifestyle.
Wow. From what you said, right, I believe that there are a lot of involvement and working with big data and data everywhere. And that's why you put the AI and ML as a foundation of everything in your cognitive telco slide. Am I right?
That is correct. So a lot of the digital transformation, both in Thailand and outside, I would say has been focused on the front office, right? So you've got a lot of, if you look at a typical bank, we've gone to a lot of self-service, for example. So things that you had to do in the branch have been pushed out to the consumer to actually do. So when you apply for a loan, you can apply for that loan, using a very fancy digital interface. You can upload the documents, you can do your pre-screening and all of that. But then when you come to underwriting the loan, the back office or the middle office type of processes, I think we've only scratched the surface on that. And the reason for that is those are far more complicated processes than typically the front office process. And that is why I think if you apply cognitive type of techniques to those middle and back office problems, you greatly enhance your efficiency and can really pull out resources and deploy them to other areas within your company. So I think this is really the area that has remained relatively untapped, I think, certainly in this part of the world. And I think it offers us a very great opportunity for, straight through processing, the ability to essentially from, almost instantly respond to what a customer wants in a very meaningful and directed way. I think these are the areas I believe which will come in the next wave, and that will be powered by AI and machine learning.
Right. You also mentioned about the friction, right? How are you removing the frictions in your technology delivery pipeline? And can you share us some example of how you partner with Microsoft and how Microsoft help you to reduce that friction and increase the speed?
Right. So once again, I've put together some of my thoughts, right? So in order to really understand friction so that we are all in the having the right definition, right? So there's from an IT perspective, there are many types of impediments to speed, a lot of hurdles that need to be overcome. And so the way to kind of look at the question thoughtfully is to look at what the causes of friction are. So I believe that any IT organization is going to have technical debt, what I call the accumulated missteps of the past, right? All the shortcuts that have been taken, and over time, this will lead to a certain degree of inefficiency within your within your ecosystem. So how Microsoft can help in this area, in a sense, you already are helping, because ever since we signed the strategic partnership, we've been working together with our GSI to drive our cloud transformation. And I opted to not go lift and shift because I view cloud transformation as a golden opportunity for us to retire some of that technical debt. So one of the ways we did that is, I call it, 4 Rs. So I looked at all my applications, and I made decisions whether to, refactor them or rebuild, re-architect, or retire them, right? So this is a great opportunity for me to simplify my ecosystem and bring it kind of kicking and screaming into the modern world. And there may be certain applications that I do want to do lift and shift, but I think that would be the minority of what I want to do. What I really want to do is kind of open up the guts, look in, optimize it for cloud, and then move it to cloud. So capitalizing on that. The other area is this expanded ecosystem, these new partners, these new business models, these new working models are all leading to increased focus on security. I spend quite a bit of my time in a given week on security related issues. And I think that's probably the trend that's going to continue for the foreseeable future. So building security into the development cycle itself, right? Essentially security by design, privacy by design, having best practices in development to kind of avoid the problem altogether. So that's one focus. And certainly we've been working with you to discuss, your zero trust mindset that you brought to market. And we hope to, pursue that to some degree, and strengthening our Active Directory and kind of reducing our vulnerabilities. And then there's the legacy cleanup aspect also, right? So this is probably more in line with what I would term in that technical debt area, but getting rid of reducing our obsolete software and operating systems, and using some of our cloud modernization techniques to kind of be the catalyst for driving that change. So kind of cleaning up the house is how I call it, so to speak. And then bringing in a higher degree of automation into our CI/CD area. So this is, I would say most companies talk a good game, but the proof is in what we actually execute. So I've tied my DevSecOps rollout. So we are using a pretty comprehensive DevSecOps tool chain, and some of your products are featured in that. GitHub Enterprise and such as a very integral part of it, and bringing that degree of automation to all the projects, and building in good practices, good hygiene, and good security into the process. So it's really problem avoidance, but making sure that if something slips through the cracks, we have the right scanning and vulnerability assessments before we go over to production and it becomes a real problem. But getting that mindset change, reducing the walls that typically exist between the development side of the organization and the operations side of the organization, right? There's some kind of implied hierarchies of between teams, and breaking down those barriers. So that's some of the leadership that I need to show to ensure that we that the operation side of the house and the feedback loops back into development are seamless and friction free. And then we also have the automation aspects. I kind of mentioned it earlier in my talk of the cognitive telco, but we've done, I think, a pretty good job in terms of kind of starting and using robotic process automation, and we're doing some business transformation of our processes. We have a large ERP implementation going on, for example, to kind of get to more standardized best practices. But once again, yeah, we're working with you guys again on the using your Power Platform as part of the standard for some of our automation. And I think the take up by the average AIS employee has been quite good. I think there is a high degree of excitement, and we've kind of declared that everybody should have a bot or two that they're using and driving efficiency. But like I mentioned earlier, I think the real improvements are going to come when we start tackling those more complicated processes and move away from the low-hanging fruit and start taking on those middle and back office challenges. So, and then last but not least, I think on our data velocity areas. So this is something I think that's inherent in a lot of complex organizations. The very nature of the way systems are architected and the way data is processed within the organization gives you a higher degree of data latency, and we need to look at that quite sharply in the next year or two to try and see how we can reduce some of those aspects and essentially reduce the transformation, the data transformation workload that we currently undergo that causes us to have latency in the first place, right? So monthly data may not be available for 7, 8, 10 days after the end of the closing, for example. And in some use cases, that's not a problem, that degree of latency. In some use cases, it could be a pretty significant problem that we would need to ensure. And so I think as we start to migrate workloads to the cloud and I start to execute my refactor, rebuild, re-architect, and retire strategy, I believe some of these things will come to the forefront and will give us opportunities to improve our data models and the way we are planning our data. So I think when we remove, and these are just, I would say my top 5. I'm sure there's probably others, but, I figured that these were what came to mind when I started thinking, seriously about this question and the areas that, I want to focus on to try and improve AIS's overall profile.
Wow, thank you. I like you take this opportunity, cloud transformation technology as a golden opportunity to retire the technical debt. And I like your keywords that you take this opportunity for cleansing your house, right? Cleansing the house is not easy for sure, right? And we have just only a few minutes left. Can you, what is your parting words of advice for any company that want to doing the digital transformations, Khun Sanjay?
So I would say I think for cognitive telco, it's going to take some time. I think we need to be patient and we need to focus on laying the foundations properly and kind of resist urges to take shortcuts, because that's the reason we're like many companies sometimes suboptimal, right? So resist those urges. I also think execution is key. Every key project, every change in behavior or process is an opportunity to move us into a more optimal state of being. And I think bad execution is your #1 enemy to getting to that goal. And oftentimes we for various reasons, whether it be budgetary pressures and stuff, shortcuts are taken or the less optimal partner is chosen. And I'm trying to change that. And you notice I'm using the word partner a lot. I've moved away completely from using the word vendor, because I think a vendor relationship is a one and done relationship, and that's not what I want to have. I really think that we will benefit a lot from outside in thinking and having, you're going to get that diversity of thought and opinion and best practice when you partner with with companies that have done it before or have done it in other countries and all of that. So I think it's very key that we have the right people in our orbit. And the other lesson learned, I would say, is around getting your key executives to buy into your strategy, because a lot of the key executives in a telco don't spend a lot of their time thinking about IT and the latest, greatest ways of doing things. So there is a real teaching aspect to the job to explain why something should be the way it is and why we should perhaps do something. For example, us going to cloud was also a fairly involved internal discussion as to whether it was the right strategy for us. And ultimately, once everyone was sufficiently aligned and knowledgeable, then the decision itself kind of became quite easy and expected. Finding and retaining talent. This is something that everybody is fighting for, and I think on the for the technologies that I've mentioned, whether it be on the data science side or on mobile architecture or integration or blockchain, these are all high demand skills, security, and we're all competing for each other. So we need to find them and we need to retain them, and to retain them, we need to have those meaningful experiences with our employees and ensure that they stay with us. So that's the other thing that I spend a good deal of my time on. And then ultimately, I think, building that partnership ecosystem and finding the right partners that will be with you in the long haul. And certainly I consider our relationship between AIS and Microsoft to be in that area of really a solid partner that is helping us in that move to getting to that cognitive telco destination.
Wow. Thank you so much, Khun Sanjay. I wish that I could have longer time than this to learn the things from you, from your experience. But unfortunately, we are run out of time. Thank you very much for your time spending with us, right? We are grateful for your time and effort you took to share these thoughts and experience with us. Hope you can join us again next time, Khun Sanjay.
Thank you for inviting me, Khun Phupa, and looking forward to continuing to work with you and your team.
Sure ครับ Thank you for your partnership ครับ สวัสดีครับ
Okay, สวัสดีครับ Bye bye.